Welcome back to another episode of Boots on the Ground, where we discuss Israel's politics, wars, and identity. Before we start, I just want to say thank you to our partners here at the Jerusalem Media Group and our sponsors, BeThereIsrael.com. BeThereIsrael.com provides live video streaming and production for events here in Israel. So even if you can't be here in person, you can still be part of the event. And as always, if you like our content, click the like button, share, and leave a comment. I'm joined today by Brigadier General Danny Van Buren. Danny came up the ranks through the Tank Corps. After leaving the military, he started a successful career in commercial law. He then returned to the uniform and ultimately served as the Chief Reserve Officer. At the beginning of the war, Danny and a group of other like-minded leaders created a movement called Nikra'im LaDegel, Called to the Flag, a movement championing real Zionist and Jewish values. Welcome to the show, Danny.
Thanks for having me.
So before we start the show, how about you tell us a little bit about what is Nikra'im LaDegel, or we're gonna go with that name in English.
Okay.
Nikra'im LaDegel. What are the founding principles, the ideas? What's the vision of the organization?
I think in order to do so, I'll have to go back to the background of why I actually founded this organization.
So we can go back to 1984 when you first drafted, if you like.
I don't want to bore the audience, but anyway, regarding the movement, I think it's all going back to the times where the Israeli society was really divided due to the judicial reform that the government was meaning to perform. It was more than 2.5 years ago. And I had the feeling coming from a private sector. I was minding my own business in terms of running a small company in the area of education and technology. And it struck me that we are going apart. It's like the Israeli society is going back to being different tribes, with any one of them going to different direction. People started talking about dividing the nation, to Judea and Israel, and the violence in the street was terrible. And for me, I think the moment which I came to the decision that something has to be done was when I felt that the army is being, the people that started refusing going to Miluim, to the reserves, starting to touch the most holy, I think the holiest issues or narratives of the Israeli society. And I think I thought to myself that when the army is in stake and when the security of Israel is in stake, that you cannot just sit on a fence and look from the side and tell yourself, okay, it's going to go over and it's going to be okay, because it wasn't going to be okay. And I think October 7th proved to us that it wasn't okay. So going back to your question, actually I decided, or many people started coming over to me because I was in the media talking about the injustice of what the people who refuse to go to the reserves is doing, the harm they are doing to the Israeli society. And I felt this was at the time, at least, it was a unique voice, because most of previous, to retired senior officers were talking in favor of refusing to going to the army, justifying it by we have now a situation where democracy is in stake.
They were making the army a political entity at that point. They no longer belonged to the nation of Israel, belonged to a specific political entity.
And I always thought that the army is, it's a no entry zone. You don't put the politics into the army, and it's something which it doesn't matter whether you are we're secular or orthodox, or if you live in the north or in the south, or if you were right wing or left wing. The army belongs to the state of Israel, to the Israeli society, and it's not a place for politics. And
that's actually something Sean and I discuss a lot on this show. A lot of our optimism comes back to every time we look forward to going back into uniform, is we're actually able to put all of our differences aside and just have a cup of coffee with our friends who we completely disagree with on politics, religious, whatever. Didn't matter our disagreements. The uniform was what unified all of us together.
And if you argue about politics, you remain friends.
Oh, of course. Those were the most heated discussions are always politics. But then the bell rings, as a figment, the bell rings and we pick our guns up and we go fight together, side by side. protecting each other, irregardless of our political beliefs. So that was, for us, the uniform, like you're saying, it represents this apolitical, pure thing that belongs to the entire nation of Israel and not one political side.
Yeah, so this is I think was one of the major reasons for me to think of going to the public arena, and I think on a personal level, the second was the fact that few of my friends, mainly I could say my best friend, just disconnected his relations with me after 20 years, just for not sharing the same political agenda, or the fact that we thought differently about the judicial reform. And this was good enough reason to to go apart and to stop talking to each other. Not me, from his side, and for me it struck me as something which is we are going crazy. People are not going to the army. People are separating from friends. People are talking about dividing the society to two different countries. And I had the feeling that if we are not going to do something, that the entire Zionist, history is about to go to the drain. So we started to found a movement based on on the principles by which the Israel was actually founded. The Independence Declaration said that this is the national place for the Jewish people.
Right.
Nobody argued about the fact that it belongs to the Jewish people, not to the Israeli people, not to any other people, to the Jewish people. And I'm talking from a secular point of view, with a lot of respect to the Jewish tradition. So for me, going back to the origin where it came from, my grandparents, from all sides, come from different places. Two of them survived the Holocaust in Europe, in the Netherlands. Other came from my grandfather came from Russia and later from Manchester, and my grandmother came from seventh generation in Jerusalem, but before that from Iraq. So all this mixture of cultures have only one common ground: the national home for the Jewish people, and people started question this. Is it just is it okay to talk about Judaism as the basic of the state of Israel? So it made me think that we need to go back to the core values by which this nation was founded, and to stop the delegitimization of right-wing people. For a lot of I would say decades, people who are coming from the right wing are not allowed to speak out their minds in universities, in the work, sometimes in government institutions. So I had some people coming over to me and they say, you look somewhat intelligent. How come you're a right wing? And my mother was called up to a hearing before firing her a lot of years ago, because she put a poster of Menachem Begin on the porch.
Wow.
In the 81 election, and my grandfather was fired from the Ministry of Economics because he refused to hold the red certificate belonged to the Mapai.
This is all before my time here.
So I'm a third generation of the delegitimization of people who have right-wing opinions. So this had to be stopped, because it's okay to have different opinions. It's okay to have a left-wing opinion. It's okay to preach for a Palestinian state. I'm not opposed, but we can have an argument. But
that's the beauty of democracy.
Yeah,
that's the entire purpose of democracy.
But I think the voice that I'm trying to represent is of people who felt that they are not legitimate. And this is horrible, because you cannot have a real democracy if your opinion is not legitimate.
So to summarize, the foundational idea of Nikra'im LaDegel would be to support the voices that there should be real open discussion on everything, that the subjects should be open, that the army itself is a no-go zone. We don't bring politics into the army, we don't bring politics out of the army, The army is its own separate entity that's answerable to the elected government, and that we don't get and there's no, you don't use politics as an excuse to serve or not to serve.
Of course.
And what else? What other than the principles of free speech, democracy, and service?
You know, in terms of politics, in terms of you know, opinions regarding the Israel-Palestinian conflict, we have a very specific voice that says, you know, we don't use you know, vague terms. We are very much against any kind of Palestinian state, because I think one of the facts that we learned from October 7th was that you cannot you know, you cannot overlook things that are in your face. For decades now, since 100 years ago, and mainly since the Oslo Accords, Oslo Agreement, we see that the Palestinians are, you know, violating any aspect of the agreement. And we look at it and we say, look, it's okay. We have extremists in our side. They have extremists in their side, and basically most of the people want peace. No, they don't want peace. You should look at the Hamas treaty. You can look at the Palestinian treaty. They have only
charters. They're founding charters.
Charter. Sorry, they have only one purpose: the destruction of the state of Israel and establishing a Palestinian state on the ruins of the Jewish state. They don't want to live side by side. They don't want to divide the country. They want their own country instead of Israel. And unless you understand, if you don't understand this, you keep chasing peace. You keep telling to yourself that eventually they want the same as we do. No, they don't.
So this is another thing that we've discussed on this show, is that there's the Western values that we hold dear, that we believe in our own self-interests, and that it's very hard for a lot of people to accept that there are people in the world that hold a different set of priorities and different set of values, and that not everyone is the same, and not all social structures are equal.
Sure.
And that Islam, it's not unique to the Palestinian people, whatever that is. Islam doesn't coexist. Islam is not a religion of coexistence and peace. It's a religion of conquering and subjugation.
Yeah,
wherever it goes.
Yeah, it reminds me what you just said, that I was once in Australia, and I talked to some Christian woman and tried to explain the roots of the conflict in the Middle East. And I told her the same thing that you said now, that we are not acting by the same beliefs or the same values. They are not democratic society. They don't see life as sacred. On the opposite, they see death as sacred. So she couldn't grab it, and she told me, no, I don't. People are people everywhere. So you know, there's a significant blindness in the Western world, mainly now in Europe, as maybe as we can talk about it later. That people don't realize that these are two separate civilizations, if you can call the barbaric civilization of extreme Islam civilization at all, but we don't act by the same beliefs and values. So this is something for the Western society which is almost impossible to grapple or to understand.
I think they're starting to grapple with it. After 2 rounds of speaking in the U.S. and now I'm going for a third, it's something that I've been asked to speak about a lot and pointed out. They're starting to understand it because they're being faced with it in reality. The last time the United States was in direct conflict with Islam were the Barbary Wars. In the late 1700s was when the pirates of northern Africa would take Americans prisoner. And then Iraq and Afghanistan, that was a conflict that they created, but it wasn't direct conflicts of civilizations. We're getting off subject though. Yeah. Let's get back onto subject. As a movement, as Nikra'im LaDegel, as a movement that's not just trying to create and defend the ideas of free speech and democratic and civil discussion, as a movement, it also has stances on every specific subject that comes up in the political world or society in Israel. I want to go through some of them with you just so we understand what the organization stands for. You touched on the fact that the movement doesn't support a Palestinian state, and the narrative that there could be that our homeland is for anyone other than the Jewish people. But I want to get something more specific from you. You started off by saying that how the movement started out from the judicial reform. You saw that the rift that was being created in Israeli society, and that was what what pushed you to act. So, in that spirit, what would be, in your opinion, the solution for the current judicial reality that we're in? We both agree that it needs to change.
Yeah.
I think everyone in Israel, at least the majority, would believe that there needs to be a change.
Yeah.
And the biggest argument is what that change is or how that change should exist.
And you should add another WH question: who is committing the change? Because I think one of the main issues was that the fact that the change, which is necessary by, according to most people, as you said, was performed by a right-wing coalition. So to start with, it's not the reform; it's the reformer.
So automatically, again, it's the message, not the messenger.
Yeah.
Is that automatically it doesn't matter what the message is. If it's a right-wing government, then the message is automatically bad.
Yeah, but to be honest, I think the way the coalition tried to, or the Minister of Justice tried to perform this reform was quite poor.
I'll agree with you, but I on purpose don't want to get into like the specific personal criticism, because then we'll be here for 3 days. Because I'm sure between the two of us, we have a lot of people that deserve a lot of criticism. But I want to talk about the ideas, because I think one of the beautiful principles of at least Western democracy is that we don't attack the messenger, we attack the message. We don't talk about the personality, we talk about the ideal or the theory. So in your opinion, and the movement's opinion, which you represent, what would the correct reform of the judicial system be? What should the end goal be? Forget how we get there at the moment.
Yeah, I know. I think the main, if I can summarize it in one sentence, the main idea is to restore the checks and balances between the three authorities. The judicial authorities, the government, and the parliament, and the Knesset. And it was all gone. Because now, I think that what comes to mind mainly in the last 2 years is the fact that the Supreme Court took over the entire decision making. They interfere with any decision of the government or of the Knesset. They actually acting as they are the sovereign,
legislators,
the legislator and the sovereign. So it's something that has to change, because I think it came to an absurd when they canceled the law, and then they canceled I don't remember the term, how do you say, Chok Yesod.
A foundational law. The Israelis equivalent of a constitution.
Of a constitution. So they canceled it too. And you say, what is the judicial, what gives you the authority to cancel this law? And they say the Declaration of Independence. So, you can manipulate everything and you can play with words, but in order, a law is a law. And I really believe that, coming from a judicial background myself, I was a lawyer. I'm not sure if we also mentioned this, but coming from this background, I really believe in the in the law. And what happened in Israel is we are not acting by the law. We're acting by the
feelings.
No, not the feelings, but by what the Supreme Court says. They are the law. And then this has to be changed, not in a way of canceling the Supreme Court, but in the way that the Supreme Court should go back to its place, to interpret the law, to when some authority is acting against or not according to the law, to cancel their decision and so on, but not to create their own law. And this is something that the balance should go back to its original place. And I think the real judicial reform was created in the term of when Aaron Barak was the president of the Supreme Court, and he started this idea of everything can be judged, and I think it gets a lot of criticism around the world, mainly from professors and Supreme Court judges in the States. They say that what is going on in Israel is unheard of.
It's absurdity.
It's absurd.
It's absurdity. We already have, so that's where, as an American, I come in, our civil education. I went to public school. Our civil education within the federal concept of the United States was very strong. And I've self-studied, again, the Federalist Papers, and I've read through the theory behind the creation of American democracy. Here, we already have a major problem that the legislative and the executive branch is kind of one and the same. There's no real delineation between the two. And then the judicial branch, which should help create that delineation, instead of creating the separation, just took all of the power for itself.
Yes.
So that gets back to the question, though: how do we change that? What would recreate? How can we recreate the balance between those branches? In theory, if you could snap your fingers and it happened, what would be the mechanism that creates that balance?
I think one of the major sins of the when Israel was founded is that they skipped the necessity of creating a constitution. And ever since, we are trying to find the balance between laws and between the way they are implemented. And if I would say now, it's of course it's in a nutshell, but it's not the entire philosophy. But if we could create a fundamental law which deals in legislation in terms of specifying the way a law can be passed in the parliament, and then what are the ways by which a fundamental law can be passed in what majority, for example, and then how significant people are, how do you say, minuim,
appointed.
Senior civil servants are appointed. Currently the Supreme Court interferes in everything the government is appointing, whatever they want. So, how these people can be appointed, how these people can be fired. The head of the Shin Bet, for example, the Judicial
Appointments Committee.
So all of this, once you regulate this and you put it in specific terms in a fundamental law, then you have at least a basic law by which the different authorities, the Supreme Court and the Knesset and the government can act. So currently it's all open. Everything the government is doing is going to court. You cannot, the government, although the fact that you have a specific law saying that the government is entitled to appoint the head of the Shin Bet.
It's like the prime minister. The law is written. It's the prime minister's prerogative.
It's
and he
prerogative,
can't do it.
and he can do it.
So
we need to put some this farce to an end, and we need to put it in a specific law saying the way people are appointed, the way laws are being passed in the Knesset. And once we do so, hopefully it will reduce the level of clashes between the different authorities.
Okay, so now moving on. One of the cornerstones of Nikra'im LaDegel, of the movement, and one of the cornerstones, it seems like, from your own personal life, is service. You both served in the tank corps. You were a company commander or brigade commander. I don't remember.
Eventually, brigade commander.
You left the uniform. You came back to the uniform, and then you held a position that it's rarely understood, but it is very representative in Israel. You were the chief reserve officer, in charge of all of the reservists. And I asked you, as a reservist myself, I still to this day don't completely understand the role of that position, but I understand that it's an embodiment of representing this ideal of service. It's helping to maintain and be a buffer. It has specific responsibilities, but it seems more that it's a representative of all of the reservists within the high command, and it's there to represent our interests and our needs and the things that are unique to reservists. But I think more personally, it represents this need to constantly be serving, and that you're a person of service. Again, no one asked you or no one said, hey, you're living a comfortable life, you're a successful lawyer, come, go get interviewed, get screamed at, get yelled at, lose your friends. What is it about national service that is so important for us as a people? And how do you see, obviously, towards the Haredi community, or what solutions on national service as a whole do you think we need to implement as a nation?
I think the value of service is currently very clear due to the war that we are having, and unfortunately. And it wasn't very clear 20 or 30 years ago. Whenever there is a feeling within the Israeli society that we have come to a peace era, it's okay, we are living in between the wars and the operations, and sometimes there's a specific operation in Gaza, but basically we are living a normal life. And
right, so it's funny, because even when the Israelis feel that service is less, because we're at peace or whatever it is, amongst immigrants from abroad, that motivation is always there.
Yeah.
It doesn't go because it's more real for us coming from abroad. We may not have the gun pointed at our head, but we recognize what it means to not be part of the people to come. Sorry.
No, everything is more or less normal. You know, we try to normalize our life here. You know, you can currently you can sit in your house and then you have a siren going off. And oh look, it's a missile from Yemen. It's just a ballistic missile. Let's go to the mamad, to the security room, and stay for 2 minutes, and you forget about it a minute later. If you tell this to someone from the States or from Europe,
you think you're crazy.
You think you're crazy. So we are trying to normalize our life. And in this term, we kind of neglected the value of service. You know, not all of us, but some people in Israel thought that, you know, we cannot live in a military society. We need, you know, we are a startup nation. We want to do business abroad. We are traveling all over the world, and life is nice and life is good. But if it's okay to have a normal life, but then you cannot neglect the fact that without the value of service, without being committed to the security of Israel, the normal life will not exist and Israel will not exist. So this is something for me on a personal level was always there. You know, I ran a civilian life, and at the same time I was in the reserves, and I served for, in normal years, you know, 50, 60 days a year, in less normal years, 100 days a year, and it sounds like it's reasonable, but it's not, you know.
No, it's not reasonable.
You have a law office, and then you have one third of your time you're in the army. And you get nothing for this, you know. You just lose money. So but this is our life. So you know it.
I've known it for the last 2 years.
Yeah,
it's been
So I ran this life
normal.
for 16 years, you know, in between the civil lives and the reserves, in different positions, and then they asked me to go back, and I think it relates to the name of the movement, Nikra'im LaDegel, call to the flag. They asked me if I'm willing to go back to the active service and be the chief reserves officer. And for me, it was a nightmare because, you know, it wasn't an operational job. I was used to be, you know, a company commander, brigade commander eventually, you know, and this was going to be part of the general staff and represent the reservists and go all over nations and go to meeting with member of Knesset and ministers and so on. It was my intention when I drafted to the army. But then they asked me, and it said it was very important to the reservists to have there someone to represent them. And I said, okay, I'm willing to put my mind on my name on the candidate list. To be honest, I was sure I was not going to be elected. And then, strangely enough, they elected me, chose me to the job, and I had to close my law office, and, you know, send away 300 customers, clients, and go back to active service. You know, it's a different, and you know, when you go there, you understand, you realize that you're not going to go back to being a lawyer, because when you're out of the system for 4 years, it doesn't make any sense to go back to reopen the clinic, to catch up with all the things you missed. So I realized that I'm going to end this chapter of my life. And not trying to to brag about it, because I really think it's so important. Each of us, you know, does what they can, and you can see this in the current war. What you have been doing for the last 2 years, and others 300, 400, 500 days service, risking your life, and this is what is so unique about it. Not just this, but this is something which is actually unique in the Jewish people.
So now, what's the solution that we need in Israel to bring that value of national service to back into the parts of society that had it and lost it, and then to expand it into the parts of Israeli society that don't have that, I'd say, history of national service, whether it's in the Haredi communities, in the Arab communities, what needs to be done to expand that? What's the balance that needs to be created?
I think 3 things. You mentioned 2 communities, and you're right by doing so, because they have the same background by which these 2 communities are not Zionist. You know, the Haredi community, most of them, not all of them, are not Zionist. They were not educated to love the state of Israel, but to love the people of Israel.
Right.
And the Arab community actually, or naturally, is not Zionist. So it's a matter of, first of all, of education. You need to re-educate people to understand that this is, whether they like the Zionist idea or not, this is their country, and they need to contribute. So it's a long-term mission to change the education. This is one factor, and this is going to take a lot of time, of course, and we cannot wait to this generation to pass. So the second thing would be the law. There has to be a law that everyone should serve.
That is the law.
At
the moment.
But you are not implementing it. You're giving a pass out to the Arab community. There is not law that is they are exempted from serving, but you realize that if they are going to be drafted to the army, they're going to be trouble. So you are not calling them to the army, and same goes with the Haredic community. So the law has to be clear. Everyone should serve, but there has to be changes in terms of understanding that we need to adjust the way the people are serving, and for me, they can guard their own settlement or town. They can do a national service in hospitals. They can do a national service in any organization that contributes to the society. It doesn't matter as long as we all understand that everyone is serving. But I think the third component of the solution, beside the law and the education, would have to be not just sanctions. Everybody in Israel are talking about sanctions. We need to arrest all Haredic society, community, which are not going to the army, and put them in jail. This is not going to solve the conflict, and
it cost us a lot of money in the end.
It costs a lot of money, and it's gonna have a backlash. They're gonna segregate themselves even more. But I think the other side of the solution is the budget. In terms of budget, when you say you have a kind of a pyramid that on the top, anyone who serves in the reserves, anyone who contributes to the country gets everything, from housing to academia to anything that the country can give. And then you have people who contribute less, maybe not risking their lives, but just doing national service and so on. Eventually, at the basic level, people who are not contributing will get nothing from the state of Israel. And I think, but by means of budget, by means of money, you can also create motivation.
It's called removing privileges. It's not necessarily just sanctioning; it's actually just not giving privileges.
That's it.
It's a basic part of parenting.
Yeah. You're right.
And then, all right. So now let's zoom back out for a minute. And what would be your vision for Israel as a regional or global leader? We talked about, in the end of the day, we don't live in a bubble. We're not our own independent, we are our own independent country, but we're not Am Shekal Levado. We're not a nation off by ourselves. We live in the world. We live in a region that we don't exactly have very many friends around us. We have friends globally. Some have been showing us they're not such good friends lately. What would be your position to the world of how to represent the state of Israel? What would the foundational belief of how you approach the international community be with this idea of service? It's very internal, everything we spoke about till now, but what do we represent externally?
It's kind of a small question, you say.
Small, no big deal.
It's a simple answer, but being serious, I think one of the main reasons that we are in such big trouble in terms of international relations with other countries, and what we see now, the campaigns against Israel and the boycott of Israel in some countries and so on, is the fact that we forgot our own story. So if you don't have a story, if you don't have a narrative, you cannot expect the Goyim, other nations, to get or to support your story, which you don't have. So we forgot the story that this country is ours. It's ours because of the Bible, it's ours because of the history, and it's ours because of international law. I'm not sure that people understand or realize that this country was given to us by the British mandate according to to international decisions. We are not visitors in Israel. We came back to the land of the people of Israel, which we have more than 3,000 years of history, but it's not just history and not just romance. We got this by international decision of the British mandate, of Sykes-Picot agreements, of the San Remo, and you should know your history, because there was never a Palestinian state, and initially the state of Israel was supposed to be even eastern to the Jordan River, and for at some point we forgot our story, and we try to focus on the solution instead of the needs and of the just story of the Jewish people. So you cannot expect other nations such as France or England or whatever to support Israel if we don't tell them the right story. So this is to begin with, but this is on a strategic level. I think we need to. We tried for years to avoid the solution of the Palestinian problem. So we just focused on the of a paradigm of two-state solution, and this is something that cannot work. And we need to emphasize this and to tell this instead of talking in vague terms, because a national state of a Palestinian state alongside Israel is going to be the destruction of the state of Israel. There is no ability, not from military perspective, not from policy perspective, for Palestinian state with an army and with an open border to Jordan or to Egypt, to sit on top of Judea and Samaria mountains, to overlook the international airport of Israel or of the Gush Dan metropolitan, and they have direct line. They can shoot RPGs and rockets directly to any state and to any city in Israel. There is no way the state of Israel can survive in this situation. And it's not just a matter of, as I said before, not just a matter of the...
It's a clash of ideology, not just a clash of military.
That's it.
The two ideologies cannot coexist.
They cannot coexist, but there are other solutions, and we should start working on them. To begin with, you can create a Palestinian entity, call it what you want, a state, an autonomy or whatever, in the Gaza Strip in a combination or federation with Egypt. For some reason, Egypt is not responsible. They have a border with Gaza. They share the same tradition, the same language, the same religion, but they are not responsible for the problems of Gaza. Everybody is blaming Israel, although Egypt could be the solution. For example, if they give them a small, tiny piece of land in the Sinai desert, you can solve the entire Palestinian issue. But they are not doing so, and nobody blames Egypt for not being...
Of course not.
You can create some kind of federation with Jordan. You can create different, there is an interesting model called the Emirate model. So you divide the entire Judea and Samaria Arab towns or cities to 8 different emirates. The Hebron Emirate, the Naples, whatever. So you can create different solutions which are not a state, but which can allow people to live peacefully and to run a normal life without an army, without the ability to start working on the destruction of the state of Israel. But we're not talking about these solutions because all the time we apologize for for existing in the Middle East. Some people in Israel still look at themselves as colonizers.
I'm not sure who those people are.
Yeah. So I think to go back to your question, we need to learn again to tell our story, to tell this story to the world, to suggest a significant and reasonable solution to the Palestinian issue. So far, we're not doing none of these things. So we're not telling our story. People are blaming us for everything. We're not suggesting any solutions. So we're trying to impose this two-state solution on us. And this is a major problem, which all the governments of Israel are responsible for.
All right, so we're getting to the end of the show now. And here we have a custom on the show is where we ask our guests to share one thought, one idea, something that provides them the level of optimism. There's enough negativity in the world. There's enough pointing out the problems. We've spoken a lot about solutions in this episode, but there's a lot of problems that everyone likes to talk about. But what we ask that our guests share with us one thought of what it is that provides them with optimism before we leave. And while you think about an answer, I just want to say thank you again to our partners here at the Jerusalem Media Group and to our sponsors at BeThereIsrael.com. BeThereIsrael.com, for those that haven't heard yet, provide streaming video services for all your events here in Israel. So even if you can't be here in person, you can still be part of the event. And as always, remember, like, share, comment, help spread the word so that more and more people can hear the optimistic messages that people like Donnie Van Buren are sharing with us today.
So thank you for letting me be optimistic that by the end of our conversation. I think if you want to say it in a one-liner, Am Yisrael Chai. I think the war showed us that the spirit of the people of Israel, of your generation, of even a younger generation, is incredible. People are going back to their roots. People are willing to do everything, to volunteer, to go to the army, to help people who are evacuated. I think there's a great spirit in Israel, in the nation of Israel, in the Jewish people around the world. People are coming from abroad to help. So once we finish this war, and once we start rebuilding again our lives, I think this spirit is going to lead us to great places.
Wow. Thank you. And as we said, Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you for joining us.